This is the Dover Download Podcast. My name is Christopher Parker, and for the past 25 years, I've had the pleasure of working with, learning from, and talking to a variety of volunteer, staff, and community members. This podcast explores conversations, activities, and a variety of policies and programs which exist here in Dover to improve the community in one way or another. Earlier this summer, I had someone ask me who my favorite coworker was, and I named 3 names, and one of them the next day decided to give their notice. We're going to celebrate that person today by chatting with retiring Chief of Police Bill Breault. Bill, welcome.
Good morning, Chris. Thanks for having me.
So, you're moving on.
I am, but first, who are the other 2 people that are more of your favorites than I am?
Oh, I didn't rank them. I just said that I had 3, and one person knows because they were the person that asked, and then Mike Gillis was the 3rd.
No, perfect.
And you all benefited from Josh Wyatt leaving. So,
yeah, Josh was high on my list, as is Mike.
So, if memory serves, 25 plus years with the department, but you've had longer in law enforcement itself.
Yeah, I had a little over a year as a part-time police officer before coming up here. I grew up in Massachusetts, and back in the mid-'90s, becoming a police officer was a little different than it is today. There was a lot more applicants for fewer jobs. So, I remember taking tests for a specific job, and there would be 400 plus candidates. And in Massachusetts, civil service, which really, if you're not a veteran or a minority, you don't get those extra points, and it really becomes difficult for a kid right out of college to become a cop. So I actually moved down to Florida, put myself through a police academy to make myself a little bit more marketable, and then came up here. I saw an ad in the Boston Globe for the Hooksett, New Hampshire Police Department, and I called them, and they said, "Oh, you got to go to Dover and take the Macintosh College test. It's a regional test, and your results will go out to 20 plus agencies." And I had no idea where Dover was. Growing up north of Portsmouth might as well have been Canada to me. Like they just didn't come up here very often. And I took the test, and Dover was the first agency to call me. So I came up with my girlfriend at the time, who's not my wife, and we explored the area and thought, this would be a great place to live and maybe raise a family someday. And went through the process, and I was fortunate by then Chief Fenneman to be offered a position, and that was in 1998. So it's been almost 27 years. So the path always starts at patrol. Yes.
You move up, I assume. You were a sergeant, a lieutenant, et cetera?
Yeah, I had, one of the things, obviously over the last several months I've been, kind of thinking about my career and things I'd do differently, things that and I've been very fortunate. There's very few things I would do differently. And a big part of that is, I was fortunate to be given different opportunities. I was always challenged. The job never got boring or stale to me. So, I started as a police officer. While I was a patrol officer, I was a field training officer. I was on the SWAT team. I had those opportunities, which kept me engaged. Then I got the opportunity to go into investigations, and I was there for a couple years, and I got the opportunity to work some pretty significant crimes. And then I got promoted back to patrol. So my career, really being chief, I think I've been in the same position as chief longer than any other one position I had in the agency, which has really helped me kind of have this longevity.
Would it help if we created a parallel position that you could be chief something and not chief specializing in?
If I paid right. But, and then I got, when I got promoted to sergeant, I got the opportunity to supervise, and that's a whole different world, right? And you don't realize, it's like when you become a parent and you realize why your dad said things growing up, right? And that he wasn't that crazy after all. And becoming a supervisor is kind of the same thing. I supervised on the street for a few years, and then Chief Colarusso asked me to go back in and supervise as the sergeant and detectives, which hands down was my favorite job in the agency. You're supervising really high caliber employees, and you're doing like the most police work the agency does, right? Major criminal investigations. And as a detective sergeant, you're often leading those investigations. So, that's where I felt like I was really doing legitimate police work. Everything's important, but that was, the stakes seemed higher. You're dealing with, murders and significant offenses. And then I got promoted to lieutenant and ran the investigations and prosecution units. And then I got promoted to captain and ran field operations. I was a captain for several years, but in the middle of that period, I was kind of taken out of being a captain, so to speak. I kept the rank of captain, but I oversaw the construction of the police station and parking garage. So that kind of was a little bit of a challenge in itself for, it's just completely different than law enforcement. And then in 2018, I was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to lead the department as chief. And that's a whole different animal in itself. Like, there's really no way I thought I was well prepared for that. I think I was as prepared as I could be, but I think you're really not prepared until you have to do the job to fully understand just the day-to-day things that come across your desk. It's amazing.
At what point, and maybe it almost sounds to me like I know what your answer is going to be, but I'm curious. At what point do you say, I want to be the chief versus I really like what I'm doing and I think that this is a good career?
I think that's different for different people. For me, I always wanted to master whatever the job I had. So when I was a patrol officer, I never had that, I want to be a detective or I want to be a captain someday. It was, I want to be the best patrol officer I can be. I want to master this. I want to be really, really good at what I do. And then when I got the opportunity to go into detectives, I took the same kind of approach. And of course, as you get good at, like as a detective, as I was getting good at it, other people, your supervisors are saying, hey, you'd be a really good supervisor because you have these skills now. Particularly for chief, when I became a captain, I never really thought about, which wasn't till like the last year or two, probably 2016 or 17, that I really thought, Chief Colarusso was spending a lot of time working with me to make sure I was prepared to take over someday if I wanted to. And it wasn't until that point that I thought, I think I can do this job and I think I can make a difference to the department. And I felt really comfortable in my skills as a captain at that point. And that's the advice I give, officers starting who are really, concerned about getting promoted or, you can't control that. A lot of that is often timing, right? The right people have to retire, the right opportunities have to be presented, but you can control how you do your job and just focus on being the best you can be in your job, and the other things will play out.
Right.
And that's kind of really how I've always taken it. It worked out. So I never, 27 years ago, if you had told me you're going to retire here as a chief police, I would have bet anything against that. I didn't see it happening. It really wasn't until, a year or two before I became chief that I really started thinking I can do that job and I think I could do it well.
I had it on my bingo card, but then I realized a couple of years ago that not being in the police department was a huge disadvantage.
Yeah. Well, it's never too late.
That's true.
They're hiring.
I heard we're hiring. That's good to know. Will you review my resume for me?
Sure.
I hope that one of the highlights of your career here has been the way that you have brought in the social work aspect and sort of the non-criminal, or what we might think of as criminal activity, really recognizing that police work is social work, is being there to be responsive as customer service, people on the street that want to see you and have questions. It really is innovative what you've done in regards of the social work aspect.
Yeah, and I think, even as a young cop, I always thought the role of the police was to problem solve, right? Law enforcement's part of policing, but I think it bothers me that we use the term law enforcement and policing kind of interchangeably, and to me they're different. Law enforcement is one aspect of policing, right? And actually enforcing the law. A big part of policing is public safety. Problem solving, helping people figure out, how do we improve a person's quality of life? How do we maintain a high quality of life for the entire community? And I think that's really changed, particularly in this department, but in law enforcement and policing in general. 27 years ago, the kind of the model was you responded to a call, you figured out if a crime had been committed or not. If a crime had been committed, you made an arrest, you dealt with it, you did an investigation, whatever. If there was no crime, you moved on. And we found ourselves going right back to that situation, getting called back. And unfortunately, often when you do that, a crime does get committed along the way, right? And then you deal with it. So it never made sense to me, why are we waiting for a crime to get committed before we step in and do something? I understand that often a crime being committed kind of helps, get things in motion. But it never made sense to me that we had to put people or use the criminal justice system to help improve people's quality of life. So, and I agree with everybody that says, or anybody that says, law enforcement should not be dealing with mental health. We should not be dealing with homelessness. We should not be dealing with substance misuse. I agree with that. Problem I have with that is, show me who is, right? Who's there 24/7, 365. The police department is, the fire department is, our emergency rooms are. And that's where, unfortunately, until a more robust system is developed, that's always going to be the case. So let's work with that, right? And bringing
someone has to pick up the baton, because it's irresponsible to say, well, someone else will do it.
Right. And there are agencies, unfortunately, right, even in this region that are taking that approach, and you can see what's happening. So, bringing out social work was in no way a soft on crime approach. They're dealing with people who are not committing crimes. And I'm not naive. I understand that these same people may commit crimes other times, and we will deal with that. But this is no way a soft on crime approach. In reality, it's designed to, how do we free up a police officer to not have to spend time dealing with non-criminal issues, one, so they can actually deal with the other things we want them to do, traffic enforcement, actively patrolling the city. But more importantly, how do we connect that person to services to improve that person's quality of life? And that only goes so far. We can't force people to receive help, but we will keep offering it. And our social workers are phenomenal people. We have 3 of them, and they're just all amazing. And they're incredibly compassionate. They're unbelievably non-judgmental. It doesn't matter what your issue is. They're there to help. And, they do a phenomenal job. It is amazing to me how busy they are. And, that was one of the things that I underestimated when we started with one social worker. It's, it's kind of that field of dreams. You build it and they will come. And, we started the services, and you scratch that surface, and what was under the surface is just amazing, with how many people, not just the homeless and not just the high level things that people are probably thinking about when we think about our social workers, but people that are just struggling. They're going through their life just like you or I, but are struggling in one way or another, and our social workers are able to intervene and help them get connected to make that part of their life better, to make them function better, to make their quality of life better. If we do that, the entire quality of life of the entire community increases, right? So yeah, that is absolutely one of the things I'm extremely proud of. I was asked by a reporter a couple weeks ago, what I was proud of. During my career that changed. But one of the things that has kind of remained consistent is the caliber of people I've worked with is just truly amazing. I think, law enforcement policing gets a bad reputation because of what, the bad things that happen throughout the country, right? And rightfully so. But I will tell you that the people we have here in Dover, and a big part of that is the high standards we set, but not just the police officers, all of our civilian staff, they truly care. They come to work every day, not just for a paycheck. They come to work every day to make Dover better. And it's amazing to me how, for the last 27 years, I've seen that. And very few of the people I started with are still here, but we're able just to, as people come and go, find people who truly have compassion, the empathy, and want to go out there and do their job. And, the police officers, I think people often think, oh, Dover is just this, really quaint town and it's safe, and it is, but there are occasionally violent things that happen, and we, our police
no one's immune to,
right, and our police officers that go out there every day, that's not a job that if and I have sons who are 25, and I did not want them. They didn't want to go into law enforcement, but I wouldn't recommend it to them. Right? It's a dangerous profession. It's not. There's a lot of things that come with it. But these, there are people that are stepping up, even in these hard times to hire people, there are definitely good people with courage, with the right characteristics that were stepping up to do the job every day. So that's what I'm most proud of, is just the high caliber people that have worked for and continue to work for the city.
Continuing on that path, I have to think that the police station, which you alluded to earlier, that has to be an element that you're proud of as well. That process of going from a not outmoded, but severely outmoded space and being able to help construct and create a space that the employees can be proud of, the community can be proud of, that improves your functionality tenfold.
Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly it. I think that the facility matches the caliber of people finally, right? For the first half of my career in the basement of City Hall, we managed, and sometimes I think back and it amazes me that we did as well as we did, because the space that space limited our efficiencies. But yeah, the new space, state-of-the-art facility, much more professional, and really, again, matches the caliber of people that we have working for us.
That project, so you had to manage the builder.
Mm-hmm.
You learned how visionary architects can be without being feasible.
Right.
You had a building committee, of which I was lucky enough to be a part of.
Yep.
I think I ran the shortest meeting ever, as opposed to the now mayor, then chair. Yeah. One of the things I recall was you and I meeting with the dentist across the street and a couple other folks who, on one hand, should have been happy because where's the safest place in the city to be? Right across from the police station. But they were losing their parking lot.
Right.
And everyone, regardless of commercial or residential, always thinks, what's in it for me? Mm-hmm. It's human nature.
Right.
That I remember being interesting to watch you not be the might makes right, we're the police, this is what we're doing, right. But actually say, how do we actually make this work for all of us? And you listened, you understood, you took the tactic, which I tend to do, of I can't convince you that I'm right until I understand where you're coming from.
Right. And I think it goes back to problem solving, right? I mean, thinking back about the building, and a big part of that was just, community outreach and it was a huge disruption. We're taking the biggest parking lot in the city, right in the heart of downtown, and putting two giant buildings in. I think ultimately, and we showed that, in the end, it was a huge improvement, more parking. We increased safety in that area. But yeah, I think, just from all the businesses, all the residents in the area, all the concern of the disruption. People don't like change. I think that's human nature. But I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's just problem solving, listening to people's concerns and figuring out how can we work together? How can we both get what we need here? And I think we did that. It wasn't as easy. It's easy now to think back and see the building standing there, but
right.
But yeah, I definitely had some stressful days with managing the budget. And that was the first time I managed non-cops.
Yeah.
And it was, exactly dealing with the architects and dealing with the construction guys was a completely different process. But again, it came down to problem solving, just listening to concerns and making sure that, I made sure that the police department's needs were met and the city's needs were met. And I couldn't be any more proud of how the building turned out. But yeah, I wouldn't want to do it again. That's for sure.
The third thought I had about what you're probably most proud of is July 22nd, 2020, heart of COVID, manager's out of town and I have to cover the council meeting. I get COVID, call you and say, hey, Bill, you're number 3 in order here. Guess what you get to do?
I had no idea where you were going with that date. Yeah. I have no desire to ever be a city manager or a deputy city manager. So when you asked me to sit at the, I did, and I did a horrible job. It's kind of like when you screw something up at home just so you don't have to do it again. That was the approach.
This is exactly what you told me that day.
It was kind of the approach I took. I sat there and answered any questions that were asked of me, but I didn't offer much. But yeah.
One of the reasons I always say that you're one of my favorite colleagues is because of the note you left me in my binder. For those listening, the executive assistant to the city manager puts together a binder of the council meeting for the manager and I, and it has everything, the materials in it. So I had called Bill and said, just go on my desk. The binder's there. You can follow along. I had already made some notes. And so I get the binder like 2 weeks later for the next meeting, and I open it up, and there's this note from Bill about how much he enjoyed or maybe did not enjoy, and that I owed him 2 drinks, I believe.
Yeah, it was an IOU.
That's right up there with moving the TV.
That, I think, is just good leadership. And you guys are just good followers. You both did what I told you to do, which was weird, but
Bill and I and another colleagues were having an after work debriefing, and the gentleman came up and asked for help moving a TV, which it turned out he didn't even own the TV. It was something.
it was something bizarre.
Bill just ended up holding the door while we did the heavy lifting.
I told you to pick it up and move it from here to there, and you just did.
Sadly, that was 2 days ago.
Nah, that was funny though.
So as we
The best part was you guys realizing it, like after you put it in the car, like you haven't done anything. Yeah, no kidding.
Delegate.
Yes.
As we wrap up here, you're not retiring. You're moving on you're retiring from New Hampshire. You're retiring from the city of Dover. You're going to South Burlington, Vermont. I can't think of anyone who deserves to have success in their future more than you do. And I encourage that community to take the wealth of knowledge and experience you have, grab onto your culture and your team building aptitude, and really run with it, because you're going to be a huge asset there, just like you were a huge asset here.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that.
I appreciate all that you've done for Dover as a resident and as a coworker. And as a coworker, I appreciate the time you and I have spent both moving TVs or you not moving a TV.
I like to keep it light, you know.
But also commiserating with you about projects and running ideas by you and you're always, like me, I think you're blunt, and you'll say, why would you do that?
Yeah, right.
That doesn't make sense. And other people will try to sugarcoat things. Other people will try to, if there's a solution, there's a solution. If there's not, let's just be aware of that and move on.
Right.
So I appreciate that mental well-being that you have, and wish you good luck.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm definitely going to miss the city. It was not an easy decision, but the opportunity was just really an amazing one up in South Burlington to lead a department that's really well respected, and honestly, it's like going from Dover back to Dover, just up in Vermont. But I am definitely going to miss the people I work with more than anything, and this will always be, the city of Dover, the Dover Police Department will always have a special place in my heart, and it'll be the teamwork, the team atmosphere, how all of our departments work together. That's not, I talk to my colleagues throughout the state and really throughout the country, and that's not the case in a lot of places. So I've been very, very fortunate to have that, and I think Dover helps people be successful, but I think the culture of the city organization helps, regardless of what department you're in, you can be successful if you kind of buy into that team atmosphere and lean on people. So I appreciate everything that you've done, Chris and Mike, throughout my 27 years. And it's definitely going to be an adjustment for sure, for me personally.
Well, good luck with that adjustment.
Thanks.
We'll keep in touch and have a great day.
You too.
Dover has a wealth of history in its over 400 years of existence. Coming up, Mike Gillis is going to share some of that history with us.
On September 27, 1911, workers at the Kachiko Print Works in downtown Dover received good news. The Print Works' massive complex of 15 buildings on 30 acres, boasting 130,000 spindles and producing 65 million yards of finished cloth each year, employed more than 2,000 people. 2 years earlier, in 1909, the Kachiko Print Works had been purchased by the Pacific Mills Corporation in Lawrence, Massachusetts. After the purchase, which included the entire Kachiko Manufacturing Company, the word out of Lawrence indicated the company would move the operations in Dover to Massachusetts. But 2 years later, in 1911, there was hope Dover's print works would remain in the garrison city indefinitely. The Cocheco Print Works was the culmination of a rapid rise in calico printing that began in Dover in 1826 in Mill Number 4 of the Cocheco Manufacturing Company. What started out as block printing on cotton by hand in a single mill building quickly grew to meet the demand of the company's sought-after goods, growing into more than a dozen buildings and utilizing new technology, cylinder printing, to churn out printed cotton products around the clock. Prints from Dover were renowned worldwide for their quality. Unfortunately, the good news in September 1911 wouldn't last. Although the print works would remain in Dover, continuing to operate under the ownership of the Pacific Mills Corporation, just 2 years later, in 1913, the print works component of the mills was closed and torn down, and with it, a legacy of the textile manufacturing that began in the early 1800s. The sprawling Printworks complex, once torn down, would make way for what is now Henry Law Park. Competition from textile processors in the American South continued to batter northern textile operations, which were burdened by the high cost of heating the mills in the winter. The Great Depression would constrict the demand for northern textiles even more, which led the Pacific Mills Corporation to shutter the entire complex in 1937. The city purchased the remaining mill buildings of the Pacific Mills Corporation at auction in 1941. The mill buildings, though, would eventually become an economic success story, converting the old manufacturing space for commercial and residential use. The buildings are now owned by Chinburg Properties.
Thanks for listening to the Dover Download this week. If you like what you heard, subscribe through your favorite podcast aggregator. And if you have something you want to hear a topic on, let us know. Finally, this is just one of the many ways we share information about the city of Dover. You can subscribe to the Dover Downloads email newsletter every week or other newsletters that we have by going to the City of Dover homepage, www.dover.nh.gov. Have a great week.